Alright. How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Daled, Daf 34 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends, your friends. I think my voice is getting a little bit better, but still, as you can hear, probably pretty schwach. But alright, that shouldn't prevent us from having a good time over here. Alright, we're going to learn Daf Lamed Daled. Some interesting stuff. Kind of a big Daf. I imagine it's going to take some time, but let's see. Alright. Says the Gemara. We're going to start on Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, about 5 or so lines from the bottom at the 2 dots. Dini Mominis Hakol V'chule. Okay. So, what was it? Wait, what was, I was reviewing this on the subway like yesterday, so I have to remember what this is talking about. And we said, the Shaila is exactly, who's that including? Okay, so we said in the Mishnah, right, that by din mominus, hakol, right, I reviewed this on the subway yesterday. Only the first part though, the rest I reviewed earlier today. So, when it comes to din mamnos, so anybody can suggest something to innocence or guilt, but by din nefashos they can only suggest for innocence but not for guilt. So akol vafilu edim. So we want to say everybody, even the witnesses. So by din and mamnos we said that anybody can suggest, make a suggestion to prove the innocence of the defendant by dinei nefashos, but not the guilt. So let's say you have a scenario of like Chilul Shabbos. Okay, so somebody who's Mechal Shabbos, and now he's on trial to see if he's Chayiv Skila, and you have witnesses, and witnesses are testifying that they saw that he was Mechal Shabbos, and they warned him, etc., etc., etc. And now we're saying, so anybody, even one of the witnesses can say, by the way, here, here's one reason why he should be innocent. So, meaning you have this witness who just testified that this person is guilty and is chayiv skila, but now can offer a suggestion for his innocence. So even the witnesses. So Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, so let's say therefore our Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and is not the opinion of the rabbis. The Tana that we learn in the Brisa, ve'ed echad lo yayne benefesh bein l'zchus bein l'chova. That according to the Chachamim, it says that a witness is unable to testify whether l'zchus, whether l'chova, meaning once the witness testified against the defendant, they can't now testify. It cannot suggest to the judges something in the defendant's favor. We're concerned. Okay, fine. We'll get to the why in a minute. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, that a witness who just testified against the defendant can offer a reason why he should be innocent, but not why he should be guilty. He's already testified against the defendant. Amar Papa says of Papa be'echad minal tamidim v'divrei kol. So Papa, meaning we just suggested that we're talking about one of the witnesses could testify in favor, or one of the witnesses who just testified against the defendant can now offer a suggestion in his favor, in his defense. And we said it's Tavka Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda and not the Chacham. Rabbi Papa says you can also say it's talking about the Talmidim. I think that we're going to learn about this pretty soon. I think it's referring to like the rows of students that would be in front, that would be there in the court. They can suggest, so there's chus v'lo l'chova, and everyone would agree with that. That's not any kind of machlokas. My time with Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. How come Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says that one of the witnesses can make a suggestion in defense of the defendant who we just testified against. Because the pasuk says, the pasuk says that one of the witnesses can't suggest, can't make a suggestion in the case lamus in prosecution of the defendant. But lamusu deinu ona, he can't contribute more than than he already did by giving his testimony. He can't then contribute, make suggestions against the defendant. But he can make suggestions in favor of the defendant's rabbanon. And in terms of the rabbis, who says that the witnesses, once they testify against the defendant, cannot make suggestions in defense of the defendant. So Amrish in support of the defendants. Amrish Lakish says Ushakish Mishum de Merzik Nogeh Be'eduso, because it looks like they're being Nogeh Be'edus, meaning you have this is a capital case, and you have witnesses who testified against the defendant, meaning that he's Chayiv Skila. Maybe they're getting cold feet. Maybe, right, also now they're testifying in his defense, in support of him. Maybe they're getting nervous that maybe they're going to become Eidim Zomimim. Maybe they're trying to make sure that the defendant is actually acquitted, and that way there's no chance that people are going to come and make them Eidim Zomimim, and then they're going to be Chayiv Skila. So maybe Chacham said the fact that they're testifying in support of the defendant after they just, the fact that they're making suggestions in support of making arguments in support of the defendant after having just testified against him makes us question their testimony and their motives, and therefore they're not allowed to do such a thing. But what do the rabbis learn from the word lamus? Because Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says it means that they can't. What was the word that I just said a word that I liked a minute ago, but I can't remember now. Anyways, according to Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, it says lamus, that they can't make arguments against the defendant, but they can make argument to kill him, but they can make in support. But so what do the rabbis do with that word lamus? They say it's talking about the students, right? That many of those students can make arguments in favor of the defendant, but not against the defendant. Kedzain, as we learn in a brayso, Amar Echad min ha'edim, if one of the witnesses, after having testified against the defendant, says, "Hey, I have an argument to be made in his favor," how do we know that we don't listen to the witness? Because a witness cannot, answer in support of the defendant. And how do we know that if one of the students says, I can make an argument against the defendant, how do we know that we ignore him? That it says that one of the students should not make arguments against the defendant to kill him, but they can make suggestions in the defendant's favor, in support of the defendant. Okay, this is very interesting now. So we said that by Dinei Nefashis, if somebody is Melamed Zchus, if one of the judges is Melamed Zchus by Dinei Nefashis, they cannot then be Melamed Chova. They cannot then be Melamed Chova. Once one of the judges says this guy is innocent, he can't change his mind and say that he's guilty. Once he already said that the defendant is innocent by Dinei Nefashos. So Amar Rav, says Rav, Lo shanu ela b'shas masa umatan. So now Rav points out though that this concept is only b'shas masa umatan, only during the deliberations. Aval b'shas gemardin melamed zchus chozer melamed chova. But at the time of at crunch time, at the critical juncture, when they have to give their final vote of innocent or guilty, somebody who initially suggested that the defendant was innocent can change his vote to guilty. The reason for this concept is that once a judge says that the defendant is innocent, so then for the remainder of the deliberations, he must continue trying to make arguments and find reasons why the defendant is in fact innocent. And even if he changes his mind and says, you know what, I actually think that this defendant is guilty, still, for the remainder of the deliberations, he can't change his vote and start making arguments against the defendant. He must, for the duration of the deliberations, he must be finding ways, looking, searching, seeing how he could still argue for the innocence of the defendant. However, b'shas gemar din, at the critical juncture when they need to give their votes, if he in fact believes that this defendant is guilty, of course he must say what he believes, which is that the defendant is guilty. It's just that during the deliberations, once he says innocent, he can't start making arguments why he's guilty. But at the critical point, at the Shas Gemar Din, if he believes that the defendant is guilty, he must say what he believes. He must say that the defendant is guilty. Okay. Meisvei. So we have a contradiction, however. L'mochros mashkimin uvoin. That by dinei nefashos, I think we're going to learn this, I think, maybe over the next week or so. That by dinei nefashos, as we know already, if the defendant is guilty, so we don't wrap up the case in one day. Rather, we sleep on it. Okay, we sleep on it, meaning by dinei mamanis, already within the same day, you can start a dinei mamanis case and you can give a verdict by the end of the day. By dinei nefashos, if he's innocent, we can give a verdict by the end of the day. But if he's guilty, we don't give the verdict that day. Rather, we sleep on it, and then we say lemochras the next day. Then mashkim nuvan, they wake up early and they come to Bezdin. Hamizaka Omer. Now, a judge who the day before had said innocent, so he says, Ani Hamizaka, I say innocent, umizaka ani bimkomi, and I maintain my position that he is innocent. Hamachayev Omer, and a judge who says that that the defendant is guilty, he says, Ani hamachayev, umachayev ani bimkomi. I said yesterday he's guilty, and I maintain that he is guilty. Hamalamed chova, melamed zchus, and we're saying, we say somebody who had said guilty can change his mind to say innocent, aval, but hamalamed zchus, somebody who says innocent, eino yachol achzor lamed chova, cannot change and say guilty. If he says innocent, he can't change to say guilty. V'alamachros gmar dinu. And now we're talking about the next day. The next day is when we give the verdict. And we're saying that somebody who says innocent cannot change his mind to say guilty. So it sounds like the next day, even at the time of the verdict, somebody who had said the day before innocent cannot change his mind to be guilty. But says the Gemara, meh, with the timech, l'machros masu matan mileko. 1 second. We think that on the next day there's no deliberations. That's kind of the whole point of sleeping on it. The whole point of sleeping on it is that so you have time to reconsider your position and, maybe think of new ways to say that he should be innocent. And obviously the first thing they do when they get back to court the next day is that they're going to deliberate. They're going to pick up where they left off, see if anybody found anything new, has any new insights. So, of course there's going to be deliberations. So, kikatoni b'shas masoman, and therefore when this brisa says, or maybe it's even a Mishnah, that on the next day, somebody who said innocent cannot say guilty, that's during the deliberations. But b'shas gemar din, but at the time of the votes, of the verdict, if he had initially said innocent, that doesn't matter, he could say guilty. Tashma coming here. Tonin elu keneged elu. So, this is talking about where, by dinei nefashos, of course there are 23 judges. Now, if it was like, if somebody says that they don't know, for example, so then they have to add more judges, right? Or, if if it's like stuck, let's say 12 say guilty and 11 say innocent, so then we add judges. And we keep on doing that until we get to 71. And actually, if 12, I don't know if 12 say guilty and 11 say innocent, do they add or do they just deliberate? But certainly if one of them says, I imagine these things are going to become clear over the next week or so. I hope. Anyways, but certainly if somebody says that they don't know, so they keep on adding judges. What happens if Be'etzem, you get to a scenario where you have 70, where you got to 71. Once they get to 71, they're not adding anymore. So if you have 71 judges now, and you're still stuck at 36-35. 36 say guilty, 35 say innocent. And you can't add any judges or anything. So now what do? We're at basically a stalemate. So Tashma Don and Elu connected Elu, so they just keep on deliberating and digging and digging and digging. Until what happens? Until one of the people who say guilty switches sides to say innocent, and now you have 36 saying innocent, 35 saying guilty, and by a majority of one, he is innocent. Vim Isa. Vim Isa. But if Rav is correct, that B'shas Gemar Din, somebody who says innocent can change sides to saying guilty, well then listening Nami Ibcha, then we should also include that. Kilu say that they deliberate and they deliberate and they deliberate until one of the guilty people says innocent, or until one of the innocent people say guilty, in which case you'd have 37 against 34, you'd have a majority of 3 for guilty. But we don't suggest that. Doesn't that imply that even B'shas Gemar Din, somebody who says innocent cannot say guilty? Answers the Gemara, no, it does not mean that. Look, the Tana of the Braisa, wanted to be positive rather than negative. So they say they keep on deliberating until somebody who said guilty changes his mind to say innocent. But the truth is the same would be true the opposite, until somebody says innocent changes his mind to guilty. But we didn't want to be kind of like morose, so we focused on the opposite one. But right, somebody who says guilty changes his mind to be innocent, but the same would be true of somebody innocent changing their mind to be guilty. Tashma, coming here to Amr Rabbi Yossi Bab Chanino, says Rabbi Yossi Bab Chanino, Echa min hatalmidim shezika v'meis roin also kiluchai v'omed b'mkomo. Okay, this also I think relates to something coming up with this week, which is that if one of the Talmidim offers a reason why he should be innocent, so then we have him come and sit up with the judges, and I think he becomes one of the judges. So the Amr Rabbi Yosef B'Chanin Echa min hatalmidim, so one of these students, Shazika, that offered a suggestion, an argument why the defendant should be innocent, and therefore they came and included him with the judges. But then he died. So when we're counting the votes, even though he's dead, we view him as if he's still alive and still there, and we can count his vote of innocence. But ve'amai, why should we count his vote as innocent? Nema ilu havakayim hadurbe. But shouldn't we be concerned if what Rav is saying is correct, that B'shas Gemar Din, he can always change his vote of innocence to guilty? So why he's dead now? Why are we assuming that his vote is that he's innocent? How do you know that he wouldn't have changed his mind and voted guilty at the time of the vote? And for the Gemara, hashta miya lo hadarbe. Yeah, but at the time that he died, he hadn't changed his mind, and therefore we're going to stick with that vote. But we sent from there, and we said in Daf Yud Zayin that Shalchu Mitam is Rabbi Lazar. So I guess Rabbi Lazar sent from Eretz Yisrael that the Divrei Rabbi Yossi Bab Chanina mutza michlal Rabbeinu. But they sent from Eretz Yisrael that Rabbi Yossi Bab Chanina's opinion actually is separate from Rav's opinion, i.e. he doesn't agree with Rav. He doesn't agree with Rav. And he says that once somebody says innocent, Yutaka can't change it at all, even B'shas Gemar Din. Ein mutza itmar. So the Gemara says no, it doesn't. It's not that Rabbi Yosef B'Chanina disagrees with Rav. Ein mutza. It's not separate. It's not exited from, I don't know how to say it, removed from Rav's kilu. He agrees with Rav, and therefore And therefore, Rabbi Yosef would agree with Rav that b'shas Gmar Din he can change his mind. However, at the time that he that he died, he hadn't changed his mind, and therefore we assume that his vote is for innocence. Tashma Komenir. Shnei Sofrei Hadayanin Omdin Lifnein. So there are two scribes in the court. Echad min hayomin ve'echad min hasmol. One is on the right, one is on the left. V'chosvin divrei hamazakim v'divrei mechayvin. And they record the words, the rationale of those who say innocent and those who say guilty. So now, okay, Bishlama divrei mechayvin. I understand why they would have to write down the reasons for why the judges who say guilty say guilty. I understand why the scribes would have to write down the rationale for why the guilty judges said guilty, because what will happen is that if the majority say guilty, they're going to have to sleep on it and come back the next day. And if you have one of the guilty judges ended up saying, you know what, the reason that I felt that that the defendant is guilty, I don't agree with that reason, but I have a new reason. Well, we have to therefore know what that judge had said the previous day, so that we know that what he's saying now is different. And now that there is a new argument to be made to kill the defendant, we now have to do alanas adin and sleep on it on the new argument. We have to sleep on the new argument so that we could see if so that we could give it time and see if it's if we still agree with it the next day. So we have to have notes and records of the rationales for the guilty votes. How come they said guilty? So that we can compare them the next day. And if there are new reasons, then we have to give overnight for those new reasons to consider them. But Eladivrei Hamazakin, my time. But why would we have to write down the rationale for the judges who say innocent? So I understand why you'd have to write down the rationale if we say that somebody who says innocent cannot change their vote to say guilty, even b'shas Gmar Din. That is why they had to write down the reason for why they said innocent, so that if the next day one of the judges who said innocent tries to change their vote b'shas Gmar Din to guilty, and they're going to make the argument that I say guilty because when I had initially thought that he was innocent, it was b'davar shatztukin modimbo. There was something beferish, a pasuk in the Torah, something that of course was a mistake, and I should be able to change my vote to guilty. Well, we wrote it down, and we see that was not your rationale. You gave a different rationale, and therefore you can't change that. You have to stay with your innocent vote. So therefore I understand why we would be writing down the rationale for the innocent votes if you're unable to change a vote from innocent to guilty, even b'shas Gmar Din. And that way we have on record your rationale for why you had initially said innocent, and we won't allow you to change that rationale. But if you say that you can change your vote b'shas Gmar Din from innocent to guilty, well then why would you have to write down the rationale for why each innocent judge said innocent? We should only need to know that they said innocent. Who cares why? And they can always later change it to guilty. Right, so Eladivrei Hamazakin, the rationale for the judges who say innocent, my taima, why would we have to record that? Lav mishum, is it not because ti'ichazi taima achrina lichova lo mashkechina bu? Is it not because if they change their mind and find a rationale, a reason to say that the defendant is guilty and they want to change their vote, we won't allow them to? And even if they make an argument that yes, but yesterday I was completely mistaken, it was a verja pasuk in the Torah, we'll say no, that's not true. We know what your rationale was. We have it right here. And therefore must be that they can't change their vote. Lo, no. They can change their vote. So why do we write down the rationale? Well, we write down the rationale of all the judges who say innocent so that we can study their reasons and check that maybe two judges gave the same reason but from two different psukim. Now a reason would be learned from one pasuk, meaning if there's like a halacha, that halacha would be learned out from one pasuk, not from two psukim. And if you have two judges that are saying one halacha and as the rationale, yet they're quoting two different psukim, then one of them is making a mistake and we can only count one of those votes. So we have to write down the rationale of those who say innocent in order so that we can study their reasons and make sure that they are valid reasons. Rabbi Asi, Rabbi Yochanan, like Rabbi Asi asks Rabbi Yochanan, Amu Shnaim Tam Echod Mishnei Mikros. If two judges said, I assume it's referring to judges, the same reason, but quoting two different psukim, Ma'u, what's the halacha? Amar le, Rabbi Yochanan responds, Ein monin loin ela echad. We can only count one of their votes because one of them is making a mistake. Munani mile. How do we know this? Amar Abai says, Abai, the Amar Krokers, the Apostle says, this is ironic, by the way, because we're learning, how do we know? We're saying that one concept from two psukim is a problem, and we're literally learning this one concept, this concept from two psukim. Amar Abai says, Abai, the Amar Krokers, the Apostle says, Ach az diber Elokim, shtaim zo shamati, ki oz Elokim. That God said one thing, and I heard two, because God is strong. That one verse can have multiple rationales, but but the opposite is not true. You can't have one rationale, one reason, one halacha coming from two separate verses. They learn the Bismillah of Bishmel, and it's like that the word of God is like a hammer that breaks, that smashes rock. Just like this hammer, I guess when it strikes a blow, there are many sparks. One blow has many sparks. So also one, I assume that's what it means, unless it's referring to all those little pieces of rock. So so also one verse can be broken up into many reasons, many halachas, but not the opposite. You can't have one halacha with many verses. So what's an example of one halacha that there could be potentially two psukim for? So Amr of Zvid says of Zvid, Kidetnan is within the Mishnah in Zvachim. Mizbeach mikadesh es aroi lo. That the Mizbeach will sanctify that which is fit for it. Okay? Rabbi Shomer says, Rabbi Shomer kol aroi leishim im ala lo yerid. That something that is fit for the fires of the Mizbeach, once it is on the Mizbeach, it shall not be taken down from the Mizbeach. And Rashi says that that's right, roi lo. Rashi says, second wide line of Rashi, it's like something that was already fit for the Mizbeach. So for example, a korban that became pigul, or that its blood was spilled out, etc. Once they go on the Mizbeach, you leave them there, meaning that the psul happened, that the psul happened in the Azara. So those kinds of korbanos that became pasul in the Azara, if they're put on the Mizbeach, you can leave them there. Shenemar Zabazu says, Ha'ola al mokda, the korban ola on its fire, ma, and the beer, ma ola shehi ru'uya, le'ishim af im also loteir, just like a korban ola, which is fit for the fires. Once it's on the fire, you leave it there. Also any animal, any korban that is fit for the fires, im Allah lo yerid, if you put it on there, don't take it down, leave it there. Rabbi Gamliel Omer says Rabbi Gamliel, and apparently it's, for now at least, we're assuming that Rabbi Gamliel is saying the same thing as Rabbi Yoshua in principle, just learning it out from a different pasuk. Anything fit for the mizbeach. So Rabbi Yoshua says anything fit for the fires. Rabbi Gamliel says anything fit for the mizbeach. Im Allah lo yerid, once you put it on the mizbeach, you leave it there. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, he ha'ola amokta ala mizbeach. Right, he focuses on, whereas Rabbi Yoshua focused on mokta, on like the beer, the fires essentially of the mizbeach. So Rabbi Yoshua focused on the fire, but Rabbi Gamliel is focusing on the word mizbeach. Ma'ola shiru'i legabe mizbeach, just like a korban ola, which is fit for the mizbeach. Him also lo terid. Once it's on the mizbeach, don't take it down, leave it there. Avkol shehu roi la mizbeach. Also anything that's fit for the mizbeach, im Allah lo yerid. Once it's on there, don't take it down. V'tarbayu mai kamarbu psulin. Both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Gamliel are saying that even these animals that became possible in the Azara, once you put them on the mizbeach, you leave them there. The only difference is that Rabbi Yoshua is learning it off from the word mokta, Rabbi Gamliel is learning it off from the word mizbeach. So we see, so that's an example of one halacha of these animals that became possible in the Azara, staying on the mizbeach, and it's learned from two different psukim. Keilu, Rabbi Yoshua is learning it out from mokta, Rabbi Gamliel is learning it out from mizbeach. To which the Gemara says, no, it's not one halacha being learned from two psukim, because there actually is, because actually Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Gamliel are not saying the same thing. They taka argue. The katoni seifa that it says in the seifa, ein bein tivri Rabbi Gamliel the tivri Rabbi Yoshua ella, that the difference between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua is ela hadam v'nechasim, blood and nechasim. Because if you say that roi for the fires, that's excluded, and they would not stay on the mizbeach. According to Rabbi Gamliel, though, they're roi for the mizbeach, right? The blood goes on the mizbeach, the libations go on the mizbeach, so they would stay. Rabbi Gamliel Omer lo yerdu, that they wouldn't go down, they would stay. Rabbi Yoshua Omer yerdu, Rabbi Yoshua would say that they would go down since they're not for the fires. El Omer Papa rather says Papa Kedetanya that we learn in the Brayso of Yosef Glili. Omer says of Yosef Glili mitoch shenemar, because the pasuk says Kol nogea b'mizbeach yikdosh. Okay, anything that touches the mizbeach becomes holy. Rashi says even psulin yikdosh lo yored, it doesn't go down, it stays there. Shomeani ben roi ben shena roi. So I think that would include even things that are fit, right, things that are fit for the mizbeach, but even things that are not fit for the mizbeach. Rashi points out, for example, soor, leaven, devash, honey, things like that. Talmud Omer, therefore it says kvasim, sheep. Kvasim ru'uyin, just like sheep are things that are fit for the mizbeach. Af kol roi. So we're only talking about things that are fit for the mizbeach, would stay on the mizbeach. Rabbi Kiva Omer says, Rabbi Kiva ola. Ma'ola ru'uya af kol roi. That the pasuk says ola, so just like an ola is fit, also anything that is fit, we're talking about v'tarvayu ma'ikam mate psule. So both Rabbi Kiva and, was it Tanakama? I guess so. Both Rabbi Kiva and the Tanakama are excluding things like saor and devash. So my ma'isi lami kvasim or my ma'isi lami ola. Just one of them is learning out from kvasim, the other one's learning out from ola. So they're learning out one halacha from two psukim. From Rav Adabar Ahava, we say no, but they're not saying the same thing. Because Rav Adabar Ahava says ola sa'of psuli kibenayu. That the difference between them is an ola sa'of that is possible. Ma dema'isi lami kvasim im aval ola sa'of lo. That the opinion, the Tanakama learns that from the word kvasim. So then would say that that it's only kvasim, it's not ola sa'of. That would not stay on the mizbeach. Uman dema'isi lami ola afil ola sa'of nami. Rabbi Kiva learns that from ola would include ola sa'of and say that would stay on the mizbeach. So there is a difference there. So it's not that the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Akiva are saying the same thing. El Amar Rav Ashi rather says Rav Ashi, Kidetani, as we learn in a Brisa, Dom Yechoshev Lo Yishau Dom Shofach, that it says by Shchutei Chutz, that if you slaughter an animal as a korban outside of the Beis Hamikdash or the Mishkan, so then you chayiv kares. And it says Dom Yechoshev Lo Yishau Dom Shofach. The Rabbi says Hazorik to include if he does Zurikas Adam, somebody does Zurikas Adam outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Tiv Rabbi Shmuel, that's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. Rabbi Kiva Omer says Rabbi Kiva O Zavach. It says by Maile Bachutz, somebody who not just slaughters an animal outside the Beis Hamikdash as a korban, but even some, and also we're saying somebody who offers a korban as outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So, and that's enough, right? So I mean, there's a two separate, I guess let's say parshas, but like they're right next to each other in Parshas Achremos, but we consider them like two separate sections, let's say. Right, Shchutei Chutz and Maile Bachutz. So the Rabbi says Zorek and says Rabbi Kiva that it includes Zrikas Adam. V'tavayu mai kamar buzrika. So both Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel are coming to include Zrikas Adam. My ma'asila midam yechoshev, my ma'asila me ozavach. Yet they're learning it out from two different psukim. Rabbi Bo says no, there's a difference between them. Shachat v'zarek ikebenayu. The nafkamina, the difference is if he slaughters it and does Zrikas Adam, so that's the difference between them. The divrei Rabbi Shmuel eino chayv elachas, according to Rabbi Shmuel, who learns it out from Dom Yechoshev. One second, yeah. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, learns it out from the parsha of Shchutei Chutz. So then Shachat v'Zarak would be one. You'd be chayv once. The divrei Rabbi Kiva chayv shtaim. According to Rabbi Kiva, is chayiv twice because for Shachat v'Zarak, so Shachat is from the parsha of Shchutei Chutz, but Zarak is learning out from the parsha of Maile B'chutz, so he'd be chayiv twice. Hayitmar Allah, but it was stated, Amar Abaye says Abaye, after the Rabbi Kiva Nami enu chayiv elachas. Now, even according to Rabbi Kiva, it only be chayiv once. Because the pasuk says Sham Taila Olosecho, that there in the Beis Hamikdash in the Mishkan, you will bring your olis v'sham, and there taise. I'm sorry, sham taila olusecha v'sham taise. Vinu achmano nechulu asiyos, that the Torah joins together all of the actions, all of the things that you do with the korban, and therefore you'd only be chayiv once, even according to Akiva. So I guess that would be an example of one limud of Zrikas Adam that is being right, but that you be chayiv for Zorik Bachutz, and yet Rabbi Shmuel is learning it out from Dam Yechoshev, and Rabbi Kiva is learning it out from Ozavach. It says the Gemara, Dinei Momin is done by Yom Mechulei. So Dinei Momin is we start the case during the day, but we could end it at night if it continues into the night. How do we know this? I'm by Pope. The pasuk says, "V'shaftu es ha'am b'chol eis," that they will judge the nation at all hours, even in the nighttime. Yachi tchilas dinami. So if so, then you should be able to start the case at night as well. No, Kedrava, it's like Rava de Rava Rami. Rava Taka asks. On the one hand, "V'shaftu es ha'am b'chol eis." On the one hand, the pasuk says that you could judge the nation at all hours, including the night. Uchsivai b'yom and chilu es banav. But by inheritance, which is mominous, it says during the day, on the day that he bequeaths to his sons. Haketzad, how so? On the one hand we're saying anytime, on the other hand we're saying during the day. Yom l'tchilas, then you start the case during the day. Laila l'gmartin, but you can finish it at any time. You can finish it even at night. Maslisin to Lok Reb Meir, and our Mishnah, which says that you could complete the case at night, is unlike Reb Meir, the Tani that we learned in the Brisa. How Reb Meir Omer, Reb Meir would say, Matam Lomar, Al Piem Yekorev V'chonaga. How come the pasuk says by their mouths, that in that pasuk we're comparing Riv and Negav. Why are we comparing, disputes to tsaras? We're comparing disputes and tsaras. Managoyim bayom, just like tsaras is checked and scrutinized during the day. Tichsiv uviyom heroes bo, and during the day that it will be seen. After even biyom, also disputes are adjudicated davka specifically during the day. And just like the kohen who scrutinizes the tsaras cannot be blind, the pasuk says that the kohen needs to be able to see it with his eyes. So also judges in disputes cannot be blind. And we compare tsaras to disputes. Marivim shelo bekrovim, afnegoyim shelo bekrovim. Just like judges in a bezdin for disputes cannot be relatives to each other or specifically to the litigants. So also by afnegoyim shelo bekrovim, also by tsaras, the kohen who's checking out the tsaras cannot be a relative. Marivim b'shlosha, afnegoyim b'shlosha. But then I'll suggest that just like by dinim ominous, it's a bezdin of 3, so maybe to check out tsaras you need 3 kohanim. Vidinu, and furthermore, I'll make the argument, mamono b'shlosha, if his money requires 3 judges, gufo, his body itself, lo kol shekain, certainly it should require at least 3 judges. But the pasuk says that he'll be brought to Aharon HaKohen or one of his children. So we see that specifically by tsaras, all you need is 1 kohen. And then there's an addition of be'achas me'enov, that there was somebody who was blind in one of his eyes, David b'shivavusei, to Rabbi Yochanan, who lived in Rabbi Yochanan's town, I guess Borachayil. I think is that. Oh no! I think that was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, maybe. I think that was the other day. What did I say? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay, so never mind. Rabbi Yochanan, I think, may have talked about in Tveria. Anyways, so there was somebody who was blind in one eye. He lived in Rabbi Yochanan's neighborhood in his town. Dava Dayan Dina, and he would judge. He was a judge, a blind judge. Rabbi Yochanan didn't say anything. How could Rabbi Yochanan have allowed this blind judge to judge? For Rabbi Yochanan, Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan, of course, we know, says that the halacha is like a stam Mishnah. If you have an unattributed Mishnah, it means that we paskin that way. V'tanan, we learn in a Mishnah in Nida, anybody who is fit to be a judge is fit to be a witness. But there are examples of people who qualify to be witnesses but are unqualified to be judges. Rabbi Yochanan says, to include somebody who's blind in one eye, that while he can be a valid witness, he cannot be a valid judge. So how could Rabbi Yochanan, so if that's a stam Mishnah in Nida, how could Rabbi Yochanan allow this blind judge to judge? Well, there's another stam Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that you can start during the day and finish at night at a time that you can't see. So clearly, it's okay to judge when you can't see. So Rabbi Yochanan was going on our Mishnah here in Sanhedrin. But why is Rabbi Yochanan favoring the stam Mishnah in Sanhedrin over the stam Mishnah in Nida? One, I could give one suggestion, which is, well, the stam Mishnah in Nida favors Reb Meir. The stam Mishnah in Sanhedrin favors the Chacham. So better to follow a stam Mishnah of the Chachamim, of the Rabbanon, of the majority, rather than a Das Yachid, rather than Reb Meir alone. Alternatively, since, if I had to ask you, we have two Stam Mishnahs that are saying two conflicting things. We're talking about judging cases of Dinei Mominus. One of these Mishnayos about Dinei Mominus is in Nida, which does not talk about Dinei Mominus. It talks about primarily Nida. The other Stam Mishnah is in Sanhedrin, which talks quite a bit about Dinei Mominus. It's in a Mishnah in Sanhedrin where it's talking about specifically the judgment of Dinei Mominus and Dinei Nefashos. So if I had to ask you, which of these two Stam Mishnahs should we rely on? Well, obviously the one in Sanhedrin, it would make sense to be more definitive. It's in Sanhedrin, in a Mishnah talking about Dinei Mominus. This is probably the more definitive Mishnah than the one that happens to be in Nida. For whatever reason, it's relevant to whatever else is going on there in Nida. It's there together with lots of other, there are things that are like this, but not like this, but there are things that are like this, but not like that. And it threw that in. But certainly the more authoritative place would be here in Masechta Sanhedrin. Where am I? V'Rab Meir, what does Rab Meir then do with the pasuk that says that they could judge the nation at all times? Wouldn't that imply even at night? But Rab Meir says at night it's not allowed. To include a cloudy day. The Rab Meir would say that judges can judge cases even on cloudy days. The Tanan that we learn in the Mishnah, you can't view tzara'as in the morning or in, I guess, probably the late afternoon. Flo b'soch habayis, not in the house. Flo b'yom ha'mu'una, not on a cloudy day. Mipnei shekeya niras aza, because something light looks dull. Flo b'tzarayim, not in the afternoon. Mipnei she'aza niras keya, because something that's dull looks light. So Reb Meir compares tzara'as to Bezdin. And while Bezdin and while tzara'as cannot be scrutinized on a cloudy day, however, V'shavtos b'chol eitz comes to say that court cases, Dinei Mominus, can be judged during the day, on a cloudy day. What does Reb Meir do with the pasuk of B'yom Hanchilo as Bonov? Right, because that was part of V'shavtos as on b'chol eitz and B'yom Hanchilo as Bonov, and that was part of a whole drasha. But if you're not learning out from V'shavtos on b'chol eitz, so what do you do with B'yom Hanchilo as Bonov? So Rabbi Bar Chanina came to Rav Nachman. It's for Rabbi Bar Chanina taught before Rav Nachman. B'yom Hanchilo as Bonov. B'yom ata mapil nachlus v'ata mapil nachlus b'layla. That bequeathings happen during the day, not at night. Abai says to him, I guess to Rabbi Bar Chanina, Elamiyatam an deshchiv b'yimama yarsun le'bnei man deshchiv b'lelia lo yarsun le'bnei. 1 second. Bequeathing only happens during the day and not at night. So if a person dies during the day, then his children bequeath, but if he dies at night, then his children don't bequeath. What does that mean? Well, I guess inherit, not bequeath. He's bequeathing, they're inheriting. So if he dies at night, his kids don't inherit. What does that mean? Maybe you're talking about the court aspect of inheritance is only during the day. The Tanyas we learn in the Brisa, right? For after all, we learn in the Brisa that at the end of the parsha of Nachlas it says, and it will be for the Bnei Yisrael for chukas and mishpats. Ura kol parsha kula, that parsha ends lios din, to say that it is like a to say that inheritance is like a court case, like a din. Like Rav Yudah Amarav, that if you have 3 people who would go to visit somebody on their deathbed, Ratzu Kosum Ratzu Osindin. So if they hear him say something about the inheritance, so if they want, they can write it down as a document that can be brought to Bezdin, or since there are 3, they themselves can be the Bezdin. Shnayim Now, if there's only two of them, well then, Kosvin, then they have to write it down and be witnesses, Fenos and Din, but they can't be a Bezdin because there's only two of them. When they say that they can be a Bezdin, it's only during the day. But if they visit him at night, and we don't have Din at night, so then, Kosvin, so then we write it down, Ve'ein Osin Din, and we don't, they can't be a Bezdin on this. Because since they're there at night, they can't be a court there at night. Therefore, they're witnesses. Since they're witnesses, they can't then the next day turn into judges. They would have to only be witnesses and present that in front of judges, and therefore they write it down. So Rabbi Bachinin says yes. When I say biyom anchilos banav, I mean din nachlos is only during the day, not at night. But when a person dies and bequeaths his estate to his children, that's regardless of if he dies during the day or at night. Wow. Okay, that was Daf Lamedal Masechta Sanhedrin. Lots of interesting things on this daf about being Melamed Zchus, being Melamed Chova, and somebody who says innocent being able to change their opinion to guilty at the end during the time of the verdict, but not before then. A lot of interesting things on this daf, judging Dinim at starting during the day, ending at night. Peace out.